Oh, welcome to the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. Figure that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Let's crack open a cold one on a Monday morning. No, it's not beer. It's not alcohol, you psychos. It's a La Colombe. It's a La Colombe draft latte. Here's what I need. I don't ask for much. Okay? I don't ask any of you for money. I don't ask any of you for really a lot in this world. I ask you for your love and your support, and you support. And you love. YouTube channel's gone over 2,100 subscribers. I felt like not that long ago I was asking very politely, hey, if you haven't liked and subscribed yet, can you maybe consider doing that? It'd be swell. Picked up a lot of subscribers in the last week. We're at 2,123 subscribers as of this morning. I feel like that's gone, according to YouTube Studio, that's gone up 201 subscribers in the last 28 days. So, hey, here's to each and every one of you who may have been a long-time subscriber, a new subscriber, whatever. Thank you. It doesn't cost you anything, but I do appreciate you being here. If anybody knows the fine folks at La Colombe or Chobani, maybe put in a good word for your guy. Anyway, I love La Colombe. I have to turn the label away, though, I guess, because it's not a sponsored show. So we'll just move it on over here. I didn't even mean to do this, but I'm also wearing, we'll drop the desk here for a second. Hopefully I don't break anything. Also got the La Colombe shirt on. So yeah, that's where we're at today. It's a very La Colombe heavy day. And it's a Monday. And it's a Monday that also has like a lot going on because the NHL Trade Deadline is 4 days away. The Sixers are in the midst of one of the most frustrating stretches that I can remember. And remember, there's been a lot of very frustrating stretches with the Sixers over the past, let's say decade. The Phillies are back. They're getting really strong contributions from a guy that I think a lot of us kind of considered to be like at whatever his ceiling was going to be, which wasn't particularly high, but there weren't a lot of high expectations for him. And Bryson Stott, I want to talk about him a little bit later on. Andrew Painter has looked fantastic. We'll talk about him in a little bit. Gene Segura went onto a podcast and spilled some tea about an incident in the clubhouse that he had with Bryce Harper. We'll talk about that on the show today as well. On the Flyers side of things, a couple of things that I really want to get to out of a couple of wins here. And with the trade deadline so close, it feels like there are more and more Flyers names that are getting bantied about in trade discussions. We'll talk about that as well. So there's lots to get into today. And I look forward to doing that with each and every one of you. But first, we're going to add to the comments, and then we'll dive into the biggest topics in Philadelphia sports and more here on the Russ Joy Show. And again, welcome on in. I hope you had a nice weekend. Can I say something apolitical before we start the show? Can we do that? I mean, I'm going to do it. It's my show, so I don't care. But there's a lot going on right now. We are not going to dive into geopolitics of what's going on in the Middle East. But I will tell you, I hope if any of you have sons and daughters, nieces and nephews, grandkids, brothers and sisters, friends who are deployed abroad, I will be praying for all of them. I've talked about this on the show before, but we lost my cousin in Afghanistan when I was in high school, and it was a terrible moment, absolutely awful. And I remember the pain that my aunt and uncle went through when they found out. And there will be a lot of loss of life in the Middle East. There will be, and there always is. And it feels like we only care about it when it's our people and our soldiers who are going to be over there. And there is a lot of truth to that. And a lot of times we turn a blind eye to awful things that are going on, atrocities in the world, because if we don't have a specific touch point, if we don't have someone that is directly related to us, we don't seem to care as much. I just want to say really quickly that there's already been a reported loss of life of Americans abroad. And so I hope that whether you are somebody who believes in God or doesn't, that you send your prayers and your good vibes to everyone that is deployed right now, because while they're in the midst of it, and while I'm sure that there's some inherent fear that they all have waking up and going to work every day, their families are going through a lot stateside or wherever their families have also been deployed to. So just kind of keep them in your thoughts and in your prayers. And I know a lot of people like to make fun of thoughts and prayers. I think it actually does matter. And so that's my only request. And I don't exactly intend on commenting on everything that's going on over there. But that does mean something to me. So I hope it means something to you as well. Okay. Let's get back to making fun of Toronto fans and Steve Dangle, shall we? Can we do that? Can we make fun of that jackass again? Where do we start? I think, oddly enough, we're going to start with the Phillies today. Like I said, we're going to get to Phillies, we're going to get to Sixers, and we're going to get to Flyers. But man, I got to tell you, there's a good part of me that really does want to dive into the Phillies a little bit. And let's pick up a little bit of positivity here. The OGJH checks in with the morning, Russ. Says the Leafs are a dumpster fire. We need centers. Danny could do the funniest thing. Hashtag bring him home. Hashtag slaughter. We'll get to the Flyers on in a little bit. Dee Skinner says, woot, going to be a great week. I love that. So let's get into some of the good stuff going on out there. It's Hunzy. What's up? Says good morning. Hello. Welcome. Let's see. OGJH says, I'm a subscriber. All it cost me was my dignity. You know what? I'll take that. Well, Chris Freed asks, of the 2,100 subscribers to the channel, how many are Iranian bots? I don't know. I hope none, I guess. I don't know. We'll find out. All right, so let's do this. Let's dive into the Gene Segura of it all. I got to tell you, of all the things to come out recently, Gene Segura kind of pulling back the curtain on an exchange that he had when he was a member of the Philadelphia Phillies, I thought was pretty wild. Now, I do want to say, I liked Gene Segura as a player a lot. I really did. You have to remember, it felt like forever since the Phillies had a legitimately good infield hitter who, an infielder who could hit 300 or better. But yeah, Segura went on to a podcast, and we're not going to play the podcast here. I'll show you really quickly. What was it? It was Abriendo Sports. But this was a translation that was put out. So again, we know how I feel about translations, and I can't confirm or deny how good the translation was because I haven't gone back myself and listened to the entire clip. But we are going to give the shout out to Abriendo Sports. Here is, and there's Gene Segura right there. Look at that. Look at that stud. Look at this guy. Come on now. We all like Gene Segura. Let's listen to Gene Segura talk for a second.
Ese tipo, me salí.
¿Qué es lo que tú estabas haciendo?
Yo estaba hablando FaceTime. Yo estaba hablando con Santana.
Con Carlos.
Con Carlos.
All right, so he's talking about being on a FaceTime call with Carlos Santana. And let's go to the translation of this story from Gene Segura, former Philadelphia Philly, who apparently had a run-in with the highest paid player on the team, Bryce Harper. All right, he says, quote, sort of. He straight up told me to shut up. He came over and said, quote, get the fuck out of here. You're not the only one in the clubhouse, end quote. Man, I just left. I was on FaceTime with Carlos Santana and some guys from Cleveland. When we hop on those calls, yeah, we get a little loud. Dominicans get loud. We got to keep it real. But he hit me with that line, the clubhouse isn't yours. I grabbed my phone and my little speaker, walked out, and finished the conversation outside. What else was I supposed to do? He said his piece, then went right back to his locker like nothing happened. I told myself, let me swallow my pride and my manhood, and I grabbed my phone and my speaker and I stepped out. They just gave him $330 million deal. What was I going to do? Start something? So I want really quick to dive into a couple things. And this is where the nuance of translation maybe matters. And maybe I should have done a little bit more homework on this and I should have listened to it myself and translated it myself. But there is a nuance in this translation, at least, that he said, you're not the only one in the clubhouse. And then later on said, when he was reflecting on it, that it wasn't his clubhouse. Now, there's a difference between saying this isn't your clubhouse and you're not the only one in this clubhouse. This is not your clubhouse would certainly strike you as more of you don't belong here, which is a very big difference versus you're not the only guy in here. You're really fucking loud. Let's calm down, sport, or go have your chat in the hall. Now, there's another piece to this story that I think is also kind of worth asking about, at least, right? The speaker, right? I have to assume, was he on speakerphone? Did he have the phone up to his ear? If if by chance Gene Segura was playing a FaceTime call audio through a portable speaker, I think most of us would have probably said to someone else in the workplace, even if it's a locker room, a clubhouse, like, yo, dude, like, what are we doing here? Because if you've got 20-something guys in a clubhouse, right? We don't know the context, by the way. We don't know if this was after a game, before a game, batting practice, an off day. Was this spring training? Was it a regular season game? Was it like, we don't have the full context. But if I can tell you, I hate when people are on FaceTime calls and they've got it turned all the way up in places that like they shouldn't. Like if I'm sitting at a restaurant and it's like a loud place or it's like a pizza, like it's a pizza place, right? Like, and I don't mean like they sell pizza in the front, but there's like a nice dining room in the back. I'm talking about like if you're sitting at like getting a slice and it's the middle of the day and people are in rowdy and chatting and having like work chats and all that kind of stuff. And like somebody's on FaceTime, whatever, I don't care. If I'm sitting at a restaurant and the ambiance of the restaurant is such that like you're talking to the people at your table, you're not boisterous and loud, and the music is even kind of quiet, don't be on FaceTime. Now, if you're in a clubhouse, I think we've all heard the stories, right? And we're all very aware of, Garrett Stubbs as being like the Spotify guy. He's the one that has the playlist. And you talk to different athletes from different teams and like who has the aux cord, right? Who's in control of the music? That's a different thing. If you are playing a FaceTime audio through a speaker and it's loud and you're yelling and Carlos Santana and some of the other guys from Cleveland are yelling on the call, yeah, like I think you'd be annoyed. And I would also assume that if Gene Segura and Carlos Santana and a bunch of the Dominican guys from Cleveland are being loud and vociferous, they're probably doing it in Spanish. Now, I don't know if Bryce Harper, the Mormon who drinks raw milk and does red light therapy, speaks Spanish well or not. But I also have to imagine that there's another level of frustration if Bryce Harper doesn't speak Spanish, and that's also going on. Now, you could say that that's fair or it's not fair. I just want to point out really quickly that, like, I could understand conceptually if Gene Segura's in the clubhouse with a Bose or a JBL speaker and the audio from the call is going through that, yeah, you'd be kind of pissed. You'd be kind of annoyed, right? The same way, and this is actually where we can draw a parallel, the same way that apparently some players were pissed off in that Gelb story about how Nick Castellanos would apparently play his music really loudly on his own personal speaker if he had a good game, even if the Phillies lost. So I think that there's probably some kernels of truth in all of this. I think there's probably a way that we can kind of distill this down to a simple point. If Gene Segura was playing the audio through the speaker, that's a bad look for anybody. I think it's dumb, and it is inconsiderate of your teammates, especially if everybody's in there. Now, is it fair? Should he have been shown a little bit more grace by Bryce Harper? Maybe. Do we know that this was the first time it happened? No, we don't. So I don't know. I guess we'll find out. I don't know. Let's see. Jason Franklin says, this sounds like Bryce. Just ask Manfred. Well, we could ask. We could ask the commish. You could ask him. Harper, remember, the report was out there that Harper kind of got in the commissioner's face and told him to get out of their locker room, to get out of their clubhouse. I think that Harper probably is a little bit confrontational if there's something that he really doesn't like, something he doesn't really jive with. I don't know if he's like, I'm not saying he's got like anger issues, but like if you're a locker room leader and if you're the highest paid guy and you're the face of the franchise, you probably do have a little bit extra gravitas if you want to go up to a guy and say, yo, take this outside. Should he have told, now I will go back to this though. Segura did not say to Harper that you're never allowed back in. This isn't like the old pro wrestling thing of like the Miz getting kicked out of the locker room and having to get himself like dressed in a janitor's closet or in the hallway for months until he earned back the respect of the clubhouse. If Harper went over and was like, hey, get the fuck out of here, which Segura said that he did, that's one thing. And then saying you're not the only one in the clubhouse. If you're Segura, you do have two choices. You can pull over the car or pounce on the pedal, put the pedal to the floor. No, you can take your speaker and your phone and go out and finish your call, or maybe say, hey guys, I'll give you a call back. And then you have that conversation with Bryce Harper. We say, hey man, That's my fault. It's my bad. I shouldn't have done that. You're right. Now, we don't know when this happened. Again, we don't know what game. We don't know if it's spring training, regular season, whatever. We don't know if this precipitated the decision to not bring back Jean Segura. Like, we don't know. So there's a lot of missing context here, and we don't actually know if this was a big deal or not, right? So, AJ says over on YouTube, Harper absolutely strikes me as someone who will aggressively tell you, quote, we don't do that here, end quote. But he has a naturally angry face, so everything can come across differently. I think there's probably something to be said for that as well. And I will say this, though. Here you go. Nick Abe says, Harper is a nice dude, very down to earth. I'll say this. Landros says Harper's an alpha male, which is, I think, also true. Here's the thing. I would love to have a little bit more context about what happened. I think it also kind of goes to show you that, like, if the idea has been floated out there that the Phillies clubhouse has been one that's just kind of inmates running the asylum, I think that you can definitely take from this that, like, at least early on after Harper got this deal, which is how Segura made it sound, he's kind of setting the tone for the locker room. Now, remember, Castellanos was here more recently than Segura, and there was the whole thing about how Castellanos' kid was in the locker room. There might have been a bunch of other guys who had their kids like in the clubhouse or whatever, and maybe the entire mood in that room has changed over the years. So I thought it was interesting and it was notable and it was worth sharing insofar as, like, we don't usually get much of a look behind the curtain of what's going on with that team in that clubhouse. So I thought it was interesting, but I'm also not saying that this is a thing where you have to, like, light your hair on fire and now all of a sudden be really pissed off at Bryce Harper. Now, I will tell you something that I'm not pissed off about, and I'll tell you something that I'm feeling very good about in Phillies land. In the midst of everything going on, in the midst of all of the drama, in the midst of everything that happened with Nick Castellanos and the inability to move him and then having to move on from him and let him go to the Padres pretty much for free, one of the things that we had kind of held on to as this could be hope for the future was Aiden Miller. And you remember Bryce Harper went on to a telecast not that long ago and effectively let it be known that Aiden Miller was actually injured or he needed to get healthy and get back, which then led to the Phillies scrambling and Todd Zalecki putting out the report that Miller had a stiff back, had a sore back or whatever. Aiden Miller very much appears to be a vital piece of what this Phillies franchise believes is going to be part of the future. And he might even be part of the present, or he will certainly be part of the at least somewhat near future, right? Because there has been that thought that the Phillies would actively try to move Alec Boehm. They were unsuccessful if they did try to move him. Bryson Stott, I think, was a guy that maybe, right, if you're looking at it and you're going, all right, if you couldn't move Boehm and you want Aiden Miller to be up here, whose job could potentially be on the line? Who's somebody that doesn't necessarily project to have an incredibly high ceiling? And it's probably Bryson Stott. Well, here's the thing about Bryson Stott. Depending on how much you put into spring training, depending on how much importance you place on spring training, Bryson Stott has been on fire at the plate. He's had 8 at-bats this spring so far. He's got 5 hits and 2 home runs. Now, you could be a little bit concerned about the home runs, right? Because, well, the Phillies have had a couple of issues with guys, maybe popping up on PED reports. Like, I don't know. There's a certain guy, Mr. Alvarado, who showed up on a PED report last year. And then while all of this is happening and while we're watching Mr. Stott have some real success at the plate, there's somebody else who happens to be Phillies related, Phillies adjacent, somebody that has been here, who maybe got himself in a lot of trouble very recently. I believe the guy's name is Johan Rojas. I don't know if you saw this or not, but Johan Rojas also got dinged. He got dinged because he apparently tested positive for a banned substance, which is going to keep him out of the World Baseball Classic. And so now, if you're like, I want to feel really positive about Bryson Stott's 2 home runs and 8 at-bats, well, anything about Johan Rojas? And so here you go. Here's the report. He apparently tested positive for banned substance. Dominican outfielder Johan Rojas of the Philadelphia Phillies has tested positive for a performance-enhancing substance and will not be eligible to participate in the World Baseball Classic. The suspension rules him out of the international tournament and also affects his battle for an outfield spot during the team's spring training. Now, what is interesting about this, and I saw this getting floated out there, and the one thing that I don't have clarity on is who did the test. Was it Major League Baseball, or was it something specifically around the World Baseball Classic? There was a thought out there, and I saw somebody throw this out, that it was a thing that said that it could be something like marijuana instead of like a performance-enhancing drug. Now, again, these things maybe feel slightly reckless to say, so I will just simply point out to you very quickly and in as respectful of a way as I can. This has not yet been put out, from what I can tell, by like the Todd Zaleckis of the world. Now, it would not be the first time that a Spanish-speaking reporter put out news before the rest of your regular beats. If and when it does get confirmed, then hopefully we'll get a little bit more clarity about what's going on. But I've yet to actually see it put out by one of the beats. So we will say we're taking that news with a grain of salt. We'll go from there. Okay. Hunzi says, it sounds like it was for weed. No, it could be. And Amadeo said if he didn't get dinged for Major League Baseball, it was probably weed. I'll also note that they didn't call it a performance-enhancing drug. It said performance-enhancing substance. Is marijuana a performance-enhancing substance? Freakonomics Radio, believe it or not, one of the many podcasts I listen to, recently did an episode about whether or not marijuana is a performance-enhancing drug, a performance-enhancing substance. I would highly encourage you to go check out Stephen Dubner's reporting on it. They had Ricky Williams on that show, which was very, very interesting. And you actually got a lot of clarity on what was happening behind the scenes with Ricky Williams. So I'd recommend going and checking that one out. Is it a performance-enhancing drug, performance-enhancing substance? I don't know. I like this. Connor Allen says quad A player, Johan Rojas. Yeah, I mean, he stinks. Let's see. Connor Allen says Bryce will get busted for raw milk next. God, can you imagine? Can you imagine if like Major League Baseball said, yeah, you know what? Raw milk, banned substance. Adam Glikas here says, good morning, Russ. Good morning, Adam. Good morning. Let's see. Amy says, I saw a post that it was not weed, but that MLB and Baseball Classic tests are different. Okay. So we'll keep an eye out. Like I said, the beats aren't the ones reporting it right now, but I feel like when Alvarado got dinged, there was a Spanish-speaking reporter who put it out first before all the other beats as well. I feel like sometimes when it's bad news, it gets broken elsewhere before the beats pick it up. So we'll keep up with what's going on over there. So we'll keep an eye on it. So anyway, Bryson Stott is having a really nice start to spring training. That's a lot of positives, right? That's a big positive. But there's one guy that, like, more than anyone, I think really needed a strong start to spring training, and that was Andrew Painter. So if you go back to last year, Painter was coming off of Tommy John. Painter was coming off of a long rehabilitation process, and last year there were some issues with his control, with his command. And JT Realmuto put out the idea, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, that wait until you see how Painter's doing now. And that for a guy who typically has such incredible command on his stuff, the fact that he didn't have it last year was so concerning. And you'd kind of chalk that up to just being a recovery from a horrible injury. Okay. And a big, meaningful surgery. Painter was back on his shit this weekend, man, in a good way. Painter pitched 2 innings, allowed no hits, no runs, no walks, had 1 strikeout. He threw 20 pitches, 14 of them were strikes. That included 3 swing and misses, and his fastball touched just under 98 miles per hour. So again, for a guy that supposedly has a nice arsenal of pitches, has a lot of movement on his stuff, and typically has incredible command, according to one of, if not the best catcher in baseball, JT Realmuto, who I think is going to be a future manager, maybe here, maybe elsewhere. It's a good sign. And if you're a Phillies fan, it's a fantastic sign, and it certainly maybe allows you to not feel like the Phillies made the right decision in moving off of Ranger. Because as you know, I think it was a disastrous decision to let Ranger Suarez leave, especially not knowing if Wheeler's going to end up pitching beyond this year. But if Painter's going to be the bona fide number 1 stud that this organization has long believed he would be, So much so that they've refused to include him in any conversation for any player of any star caliber over the last few years. That was a good showing for him. We'll see how it goes the rest of spring training, and obviously we'll see when it goes into the regular season. How does he fare against major league level hitting? And it's not even so much the first time up against each of these teams. It's going to be your second and third start against the Mets and the Braves, especially, and other teams in the National League. When they get to see you a second or third time, that's when you start getting a better feel for whether or not a guy could potentially be dominant or not. So, look, we have a couple of positives coming out of spring training right now. Stott kind of on fire at the plate. Painter had a really nice showing. Now, again, I don't get too hyped up about spring training stats. I don't like to dive too far into it and start putting way too much weight behind anything. But I will just note that I think we're in a spot right now where things are kind of trending in the right direction, and we'll see. I think that the big guy that I have my eye on, and the one that I think is going to ultimately have the biggest impact potentially on this team, is Justin Crawford, who I believe is still hitting over 300 so far, has a couple of extra base hits, stole a base so far this spring. He's looked good in the field. A lot of questions have been out there about whether or not he can play center field, and I don't know if a few spring training games are going to be enough to tell us that. Again, I think we're going to have to see a large swath of games this year to get a feel for whether or not he can be a center fielder. Does he take intelligent routes to the ball? Is he a plus defender, right? Is he a plus defensive player? Is he just an adequate center fielder? What does the arm look like? All those things. If Justin Crawford ends up being the real deal, if he can hit somewhere around 285, you'll feel really good about the player. And you'll probably feel good about your decision to let Harrison Bader walk and to not bring him back. We'll see. I will say that having Garcia in right field, who is a better outfielder, obviously, than Nick Castellanos was, that probably helps a considerable bit. And I don't know, if in left field they're going to go with Marsh, or Marsh is going to get a lot of the starts, well, he's also played center for you. You do theoretically have three guys who can be a bit rangy in the outfield, and maybe that does kind of reduce some of the stress and the burden and the mental load that Crawford would have playing center field if he were playing out there with a couple of guys who are minus defenders in the outfield. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed, legitimately. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that Justin Crawford gets exactly what, is able to accomplish exactly what the Phillies need him to be. Now, this is a good point, I guess, from Nick Abe, who says Crawford will get more power at some point with his size. He could. I will point out that, while there might be some truth to that, remember, we look at a guy like Alec Boehm, who has this, prototypical frame of a guy who should be able to hit home runs. I don't know if I need Justin Crawford to be a guy who can hit for power in that way. If Justin Crawford can use his legs and also use some of that power and just constantly spray the ball into left center field, into right center field, hit the other way, catch the defensive alignment the wrong way a few times, that's going to help. If he can become an extra base hitting guru for this team, it'd be swell. Remember last year, the big knock on Crawford was the infield hit rate, right? His ground ball rate. There was a concern that wasn't going to translate to major league pitching. We'll find out. I think that when we get probably the end of May, beginning of June, we'll have an idea of what Justin Crawford is. Not in terms of what he'll be as a player, the max value that he'll bring to the team, not what his ceiling is going to be, but we'll have a better idea of what a more consistent Justin Crawford playing every day looks like in center field for the Phillies. So I'm very excited about Crawford. I'm obviously excited about what I saw from Painter. If Aiden Miller is able to get back in and hit consistently, then all of a sudden it feels like you have another guy that you can kind of add to the mix. Maybe he doesn't start the year with the Phillies, but he's right there on call in case they make a move or if there's an injury. So remember, I'm not high on this Phillies team as currently constructed. I'm not high on the offseason they had. But as the weather starts to warm up a little bit, I will get Phillies fever, and I will believe in the Phillies because with the Sixers, right, I will believe in the Sixers because I have that personal connection through my Baba. I can't I can't hate the Sixers. I can absolutely despise Daryl Morey for being an idiot and Nick Nurse for probably not being a very inventive coach, which we're about to talk about. But, like, I can't hate the Sixers. The Phillies, I actively choose to try to be optimistic for because when the Phillies are bad, the summer really drags. When you have the opportunity to turn on the radio or your app or have the TV on in the background during the summer with all the windows open, right? And Phillies baseball is on and you get to watch them win some games, all of a sudden it feels like the summer is a significantly better time of your life. I like living in that world. The Phillies being dog doo-doo makes the summer kind of suck. So I will actively root for and hope that the Phillies crush it right out of the gates. So we'll see. Now, I did mention the Sixers. Don't forget, we will talk about the Flyers a little bit later on in the show because we have to talk about Risto, we have to talk about Drysdale, the trade deadline coming up. But before we get there, I do want to talk about the team that I mentioned very briefly. And I actually want to talk about that dumb slob. No, shouldn't say that. Don't say that, Russ. Don't call Daryl Morey a dumb slob, Russ. That would be very, very rude and awful of you to do. Don't call the man a dumb slob, okay? Let's all agree we're not going to call Daryl Morey a dumb slob. We're going to call him a dumbass. Dumbass! Daryl Morey continues to look like one of, if not the biggest dumbass. And the only other person who can maybe even come close is Nick Nurse. Oh yeah, the Kawhi Leonard merchant. The guy whose only real success as the head coach of the Toronto Raptors was due in large part to having a generational player in Kawhi Leonard. Yeah, that guy. Why do I bring this up? Because Jared McCain is tearing it up for the Thunder. And you may say to yourself, well, Russ, don't forget, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's been out of the lineup. And, you know, Jared McCain's coming in off the bench. And sometimes he's coming in when they've got a double-digit lead. And sometimes a double-digit deficit. And, you know, you can't really put too much into what's happening right now with Jared McCain. That would be unfair to the Sixers. You know, remember, Daryl Morey said that, you know, they sold high. Remember, it's true. Daryl Morey said, I'm confident we sold high on Jared McCain. I think he misspoke. I think he meant to say, I dealt Jared McCain while I was high. That's the only explanation at this point for how Daryl Morey moved Jared McCain and got back stuff that really isn't going to move the needle for the Sixers this year. And one could argue maybe won't move the needle for them going forward. Right now, Jared McCain, since landing with Oklahoma City, is averaging just under 12 points per game. It's the fifth highest average off the bench in the entire NBA. He's shooting just under 43% from downtown. This feels like Isaiah Joe 2.0. This feels like another player that the Sixers discarded, goes off, plays for the best team in the NBA, and the Sixers look like absolute dumbasses for moving him. I mean, at this point, it's truly kind of pathetic. And you look across and you go, all right, what was the rationale? It was about getting under the luxury tax, right? It's about getting under the tax. Joel Embiid said before the deadline, I know that we typically try to avoid the tax, but, you know, hopefully this year we add something, right? Hopefully we add at the deadline. They didn't add. They didn't add at all. You know, Nick Nurse got asked about what it was like watching Jared McCain have all the success for not his team. And Nick Nurse, who I wish I found more likable, but I don't. Again, like I wish that I could find Nick Nurse likable. I wish I could find Daryl Morey likable. I find neither of them likable. This was Nick Nurse last week when asked about whether or not he's kept tabs on his former player, Jared McCain, who, remember, last year was looking like he was going to be the rookie of the year. I want you to hear what bastion of knowledge and generally affable, likable guy Nick Nurse had to say about keeping up with his former player, Jared McCain, who was shockingly dealt before the deadline.
I've watched him very little. I've seen just a bit. 5 or 10 minutes of flipping channels, maybe. Listen, he looks good. Happy for him. That's all I can say. I really like the kid, no question about it. We gotta take care of our own guys, though. So I spend more than 5 or 10 minutes just coaching the guys we got.
Now, let me give Nick Nurse an out. He is right that his focus needs to be on the Philadelphia 76ers, and that is true. 100% true. Accurate. You've only seen 5 or 10 minutes when you're flipping the channels. Who flips the channels in 2026, my dude? Not a lot of people. No. Oklahoma City has been featured on national TV a lot. Do I think that he sat down and watched a lot of Thunder games? No. Do I think he probably should? Yeah. I think he'd learn a lot about offensive structuring and offensive systems if he did watch the Thunder. Because the way that the Thunder are utilizing Jared McCain certainly seems to be more like, I don't know, rookie year pre-injury Jared McCain, and less like the stagnant role he had before he was dealt by the Sixers in his sophomore season. Jared McCain looks very much like he's closer to being the guy from last year than he was whatever he was with the Sixers this year. I do put some of that on coaching. I do put that, at least in part, on the way that a guy is being utilized. And McCain right now, I don't know. Would you like to have a 43% shooter from downtown? I would. Do I think that the Sixers are a better team without Jared McCain? Of course not. Do I think that if the Sixers right now could do that trade over, would they do it again? They probably would. Daryl Morey is a wee bit arrogant. This team could desperately use Jared McCain shooting. Now, you could make the argument that McCain is easy to hunt for an opposing offense and that McCain's not a great defender, and all of that is true. And I am not here to try to make it sound as though Jared McCain is the second coming of Steph Curry. I'm not trying to make it sound as though Jared McCain is more valuable than VJ Edgecombe. I am not making it as if Jared McCain is a better player than Tyrese Maxey. But I do think it's fair to question, was it really that smart of an idea to move Jared McCain, who is still on a rookie deal, who's shooting 43% from downtown with the Thunder? Is it smarter to move that guy? Or would it maybe have made more sense to deal, Quentin Grimes, who is going to be a free agent, is going to make substantially more money than Jared McCain would next year and the year after, and the year after, and the year after. Would it have made more sense to try to move a guy like Quentin Grimes? I think it would have. Not just for the short term, but certainly for the long term. And they decided to double down on Grimes. And maybe that's okay. Also, remember, they moved Gordon, and apparently Gordon could have been enough to get them under the tax. They moved McCain the day before the trade deadline and had no other deal lined up. This, to me, when we look back on it, right, there is a small chance that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we look back and say, oh, yeah, that's right. Jared McCain played for the Sixers. Yeah, that guy, I remember he had a hot start with the Thunder, and then he didn't really amount to much. That's possible. I'm not saying that all of a sudden Jared McCain is going to be the long-term backcourt mate of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and they're going to go and create the dynasty of dynasties, and that McCain is going to have a similar impact on the Thunder that Kevin Durant did, right, when he joined the Warriors. I'm not saying that. But when you have a guy who is cost-controlled and was coming off of a pair of injuries, one to his knee from a season ago, one to his thumb in the offseason, I don't know, maybe don't bail on the guy halfway through his sophomore season. That's my only point. I think it's a disaster. I really do. Jason Franklin over here says, McCain, in my opinion, is okay, not great. He does seem slow. Again, I'm not saying that he's incredible, but I'm saying that he's a good player. And it was a mistake to move on from right now. Havokin says, Russ, maybe they didn't get any good deal for Grimes, so they took the McCain deal over the Grimes deal. Possible, maybe. However, I will point out that, again, that Gordon deal was supposed to be enough to get under the tax. Now, they did the Gordon deal second, but, in theory, that could have gotten them under the tax threshold that they were trying to avoid. They also, if they really needed to, they could have moved an Andre Drummond, which would have also looked stupid considering that, keep the good news going here for the Sixers. Joel Embiid's hurt again. Yeah. You guys know me well enough and long enough to say that I will continue to root for Joel Embiid, the human being. And I think it's such a shame that the guy's body just will not keep up with him. But we're going to give a shout out here. Who was the person who came up with this? Believe in Sixers put this out on Twitter, so we're going to give them the shout and the credit here. But take a gander at this all-time tracker of Joel Embiid injuries, okay? This is crazy. 2 orbital bone fractures, 2018 and 2022. Right shoulder back injuries, 2019, 2021, 2024. Left finger ligament. I don't know why that's pointing to, looks like it's pointing to the hip. That's weird. This is probably AI, I guess then, right? Left finger ligament, 2020, it was torn. Right oblique, that's the most recent injury. A sprained right oblique in 2025, confirmed via MRI. Left knee, 2017 meniscus tear, had surgery. 2024 meniscus surgery. 2025-26 swelling. Shin soreness, 25-26, still happening. Right foot, 2014 to 2016, stress fractures. Remember the navicular bone? We all do. Torn finger ligament in 2020. Let's see, right knee, meniscus tear, sprained LCL, injury management. I mean, this guy has been through it. Now, I know that a lot of times people like to just point to the fact that, like, the guy is fragile. He's made of glass. He's a big dude, and his body just does not cooperate. And yet, despite all those injuries, remember, there was a stretch in this season, a few weeks before the deadline, where Embiid looked back to being, 85% of his MVP form. He was scoring at better than a point per minute. He looked fantastic. I know that it's hard to argue a hypothetical. And this is like the ultimate what if and the ultimate hypothetical of hypotheticals. But like, if Embiid didn't have the injury issues that he has had thus far through his career, how high on the all-time list is Joel Embiid? Like, if Embiid didn't have this array of injuries, are we talking about a guy that could have cracked the top 20 all-time, top 15 all-time, top 10 all-time? Could he have gone down as one of the top 4 or 5 big men of all time? Right? Because from a scoring perspective, from a scoring touch perspective, he was never going to be able to catch a guy like he was never going to be able to catch a guy like Abdul-Jabbar. Like, that was never going to happen, right? But you looked at this guy when he came into the league and you said, he's got the dream shake. He's right there. Post moves, incredible. 3-point range. I think his mid-range touch that he has honed in on and vastly improved in the last 3-4 seasons when he's been healthy is like next level. Almost an automatic from the free throw line, right? Not like taking free throws, although he is there too. I just mean like from that elbow shot. Like, Embiid could have gone down as like a top 4 or 5 big man ever. I mean, let's think about it. So you've got Kareem, Wilt. I would assume Shaq would be on there. I think Jokic is going to end up going down as one of those guys. You put Tim Duncan on that list. That's 5. There could be more, but that's at least 5. Does Embiid crack that list? Maybe, if he had stayed healthy, but unfortunately he hasn't been able to. This is why the Sixers, one part of it is the contract. Nobody's going to take the deal, right? Unless you retain salary. So like that's not going to happen. But you understand why the Sixers have long tried to do whatever they can to optimize this team to be built around Joel Embiid. And at the same time, they've had this young backcourt of Maxey and Edgecombe step up in a big way. And I do want to give the shout to VJ Edgecombe, who had something kind of traumatic happen against Boston. Now, again, it was in a loss. But VJ Edgecombe dove after a ball up at TD Garden, dove into the crowd, and ended up delivering quite the waylay kick to a nice lady's face. And so we'll freeze frame it here. But this poor gal, I mean, do you remember let me pull it up here. Do you guys remember when Xbox 360 came out and there was the Fight Night game and they tried to show through slow motion like how advanced the Xbox 360 was and the punch came in and you saw like the wrinkles go across the person's face, like the energy kind of smash through the person's face. That's kind of how I felt when I watched what happened with VJ Edgecombe. And let me mute this. And we can't play the video because YouTube would get mad. But like, here goes VJ Edgecombe into the crowd. And as he's landing, he tries to contort his body to not hit anybody. And boom! I mean, oof. bang, to quote Mike Breen. The foot comes around, wallops this lady in the face, right? Here it is again. So Edgecombe dives into the crowd. Look, I mean, this man can fly. And look, he's trying to avoid all the people. We got to give a shout out here. We got a dude in a white jersey from Boston. You got a dude in a maxi jersey from the Sixers. And I'll tell you what, in these unprecedented times, the one thing that you can rely on is that you put your team differences aside when there is an NBA athlete flying through the air. You're going to try to catch him. It's like watching pro wrestling these days, and somebody jumps off the top turnbuckle out to the outside, and like 7 people are waiting there to catch. Now, I love this guy over here, by the way. So you have these guys. They are right in harm's way. This lady, God bless her, she's the one who gets kicked. She actively tries to avoid the foot. Look at this guy over here. He's almost like, it's like watching one of those televangelists. Oh, and she has been saved. Like, that's what this guy's doing. He kind of looks a little bit like Jeff Bezos a little bit. But he's over here. He's offering his thoughts from a distance. I started the show saying thoughts and prayers matter for the military, and they do. But in this case, they don't really matter because you got VJ Edgecombe just flying over. But he's kind of like, ah. And he's like, oh, I'm going to help you. There's a hand over here going, uh-oh, this guy looks like he's about to like scratch his head. This lady, look at her. She is just absolutely beside herself. And we're going to, let's let it run. Let it run. And, oh, this poor lady. The foot comes around and it wallops. I mean, I feel terrible for her. I do. This lady is like Joe Rogan when there's a knockout in UFC. This lady right here. Is that Wahlberg? If that's not Mark Wahlberg, that looks like a Wahlberg adjacent person. But this dude turns around. He's like, oh my goodness, look at this. Is that the guy? Yeah, that's the guy sitting next to her. So he somehow, you know what? This lady, again, bless her heart, she turned her head to not get whacked. She ends up getting kicked in the face. This dude looks like he was about to like duck and get under the table, get under the scorer's table. Anyway, this lady got whacked. Now, why do I bring all this up? I like this, by the way. Jim Gross is right. I do need a telestrator. If somebody can hook me up with a telestrator, that'd be swell. Edgecombe went up to her, and I do want to show you this because I think that the aftermath is important. This poor lady, like it wasn't like she didn't end up with a bruise or a mark. This is the lady's face after she got kicked in the head. Inadvertently, but she got nailed in the head. So she's got this. This looks like a cut, right? That was where his foot whacked her, right? But we do have a little bit of positivity. So after he goes up and over and into the crowd, at the next break, he came over, and this is important. The rookie came over to check on her, and they hugged it out. And I tell you what, this is a beautiful moment. VJ Edgecombe comes over, and we have reason to believe she might have been a Celtics fan. We don't know. But Edgecombe goes over and gives her a big hug. And that's what sports is all about, right? You want your athletes to dive into the stands to try to save the ball, save possession for their team, or gain possession defensively to take it the other way for their team. And if you're a fan, you want to avoid getting whacked. But in the case that a player whacks you in the head with their foot, you just want them to come over and give you a hug. So, good for them. Ford is here now and says, that's the please don't sue me hug. Listen, I think that lady's probably going to get something very nice from VJ Edgecombe and the Sixers and probably from the Celtics as well. I would expect there's going to be like tickets to future games and there's going to be all kinds of stuff. I don't know. Probably pictures after the fact or maybe after the... I feel bad for her. Like, it's like one thing if you like get banged into, right? Like shoulder hits you and you're like, oh, that really sucks. When you get kicked in the face like that, woof. Okay. So anyway, good for VJ Edgecombe doing the right thing. Goes over, gives the lady a hug. That's great. Lovely stuff. Nick Abe apparently is keeping the countdown. It says 12 games until Paul George comes back. Well, everybody get yourselves ready. Get yourselves ready for that. Won't that be something? Okay. We talked about McCain. We talked about VJ Edgecombe. We talked about Embiid getting hurt again. And that leads us to the Flyers. We have to finish the show with the Flyers today. I will note, and somebody noted this a little while ago, but Ford, who actively complains virtually every show, especially last week when we had 2 hockey guests on. Adam Kimmelman was on last Wednesday, and then we had Colby Cohen on Friday. We had good old-fashioned Ford complaining in the comments that should call it a hockey show. We did 44 minutes, and now it's actually up to 50 minutes of non-Flyers related content, and Ford didn't show up until 45 minutes into the show. Before we get to the Flyers really quick, I do want to point this out. T-Mac 803210 says, Russ, for your sanity, I hope you didn't watch Chris Prenso's refereeing performance last night in the Union NYCFC game. Oh, I did. McCain got himself sent off there apparently for a foul and then for dissent. I don't know what he said to the official to lead to a red card. It was in the 92nd, 93rd minute of the Union's second game of the MLS regular season. And then, in the 99th minute or whatever, a cross comes through, back post, header, back of the net. NYCFC wins. The Union have lost both of their games to start the year. And in both games, they've had a player get a red card. And both times for dissent. So here's an idea. If you're Bradley Carnell, right, and you're looking for hey, what can we work on? What are some of the things our guys need to work on? How about shutting the fuck up? How about that? How about as a team, the leaders, Alejandro Bedoya is still there. How about as a leader, we have a conversation with our guys? Hey, very clearly, the refs are very, very in their feelings so far to start the season. And it's really hard to win a game when you're down a man. Perhaps if you get up and you're unhappy with a call, you simply shut up. Just shut your mouth. Okay, that's it. We might come back around to the Union later this week. Coming off a Supporter Shield win, they let a bunch of guys leave. Ty Baribo, one of them. You got rid of Ty Baribo. He scores the goal against you to give DC United the win in the first game of the regular season, right? And then Kai Wagner's off abroad now, and they were late bringing in the guy who was supposed to replace him at left back. And then McCain last night has a stupid moment. Again, dissent, that late in the game, in stoppage time, stupid. And then you give up a goal and you lose that game. I'm not asking for much. I'm not asking for much. All right, now let's get to the Flyers. So I want to be really clear about something. And I think at this point, you guys know me well enough to know there are times where rumors come out about the Flyers. And I'm like, I don't think that's true. I really don't. I think methinks that somebody is just trying to get clicks. There are times where I see things getting floated around and I go, I really think that an agent is trying to drum up interest. I really think a front office is trying to drum up interest. And I got to tell you, I'm seeing a lot of it right now. I really am. This idea that Owen Tippett's going to be dealt right now, I don't believe it. This idea that Risto has 7 or 8 teams interested in him, I'm not really sure. I don't really believe that there are 7 or 8 teams in on Risto. And I'm going to go to this account because this one is an aggregator account. I'm not blaming the aggregator account. I, to some extent, blame the people that the aggregator account throws the rumors out from. So NHL Rumor Report puts out this thing from the Ottawa Citizen from Bruce Garriock that says, another name that could be on the radar screen for teams looking for a right-hand shot blue liner is Jamie Drysdale of the Flyers. I would be floored. I would be shocked. I would be, dare I say, appalled if this were true. Jamie Drysdale has had a fantastic season for the Flyers. Fantastic. We are no longer at, is Jamie Drysdale a good defenseman? Is he ever going to be more than a power play merchant? Remember, when he was brought in, the thought truly was that Jamie Drysdale was going to be the power play 1 quarterback. The thought was that if he were going to actually produce points, it was likely going to be with the man advantage. And this year, he has been fantastic in all situations, but especially at even strength. I will also point out to you right now that as things stand currently, Jamie Drysdale has 25 points. He has 20 odd games left in the season, right? If he gets 7 more points, so that's like roughly a point every 3 games, he will either match or surpass his career high that he did in his second season with Anaheim, where he played 81 games and racked up 32 points. He already has 6 goals on the season, which is 1 off of his pace from last year when he had 7, which was a career high. So probably safe to say that if he rips the puck on net, which Rick Tocchet has talked about and has actually made the comparison, this is why I think this whole rumor is bullshit. Tocchet a few games ago noted that Drysdale has been working on his shot, working on adding more speed to his shot, and Tocchet compared it to when Quinn Hughes did the same thing in Vancouver. And then he talked about how that was such a valuable thing for Quinn Hughes' game, that he ended up being a guy who could add to that shot, make that a more powerful shot, a faster shot, a more deadly shot. I just do not see a scenario where anything goes sideways here. I can't imagine the Flyers move Jamie Drysdale. The only reason you would move him is either to try to get a number 1 defenseman, which why would you trade Drysdale if you're trying to go get a number 1 defenseman? Would be kind of weird. Or a number 1 center. And he's not going to be the focal point of a trade for a number 1 center. If Toronto or Ottawa want to move Auston Matthews or Brady Tkachuk and Drysdale's part of the deal, well then, God bless Jamie, but you got to go. Otherwise, I don't see a scenario where JD Drysdale gets moved. And the reason that, listen, I'm right there with everyone else who happens to, keep up with Cutter Gauthier, at least, from a distance. Gauthier scored his 28th goal last night. He's got 52 points on the season. 28 goals is tied for 16th in the entire NHL. His 52 points are 47th best in the entire league. I would rather not live in the world where we have to constantly compare the two, but I think they're always going to be linked. As long as Gauthier is a member of the Ducks and Drysdale is a member of the Flyers, they're always going to be compared to one another. Gauthier's numbers look fantastic. He's had a great year. He has a hell of a shot, and he's going to be a really good player, and I absolutely hate the fact that it didn't work here. And at the same time, Drysdale's not going to put up the numbers that look even remotely close to that. You're not going to see, I don't think, a year where Jamie Drysdale goes out and nets 20, 25 goals, puts up, 55 points as a defenseman, and you go, hey, you know what? Both teams ended up getting a bona fide star. I don't think that's going to happen. But if Drysdale can give you additional production on the power play that you haven't really gotten to this point, because power play has just been shit, pretty much no matter who's on it. If they can get to a point where Drysdale starts feasting a little bit, and you add some more skilled players and a couple of snipers to this team, maybe a Porter Martone next year, well, then maybe Drysdale ends up benefiting more on the power play, and those points do increase. And if he continues to play as well as he has at even strength, then it certainly feels like a good move and a good decision to not move Jamie Drysdale. So I don't know. Let's see. I saw a bunch of comments over here. What are we commenting on? Hold on. I saw somebody said there was a trade. What's the trade? I didn't see a trade. I saw the Flyers traded for a guy who almost sounded like, his last name almost sounded like Tkachuk, but he was just a minor league guy. Hold on, let's see. Chris Freed says Drysdale is just a guy. Casual Warzone guy says, hey, maybe they can get that Cutter Gauthier guy from Anaheim. He seems pretty good. Let's see. Jason Franklin thinks that Drysdale could be the Flyers' best defenseman next year, passing Sanheim. I don't know about that. That'd be pretty wild. What is this? Hold on. Wait, what? Hold on a second. Did that really just happen? There's an NFL trade that happened? That can't be right, can it? Really? Allow me to do a little bit of in the moment searching here on the Twitter. There was a rumor that David Montgomery got traded. I don't see it. By the way, the Twitter search function has been dog doo-doo in recent days. Yeah. David Montgomery was traded to Houston. Huh. For a 5th round pick. Wow. That feels like a steal. Wow. David Montgomery gone from the Lions And now he's off to go play with CJ Stroud down in Houston. Wow. That is, that's pretty wild. Okay, back to the hockey here. Flyers Purgatory says 3 years into a rebuild and we're hyping up 7-goal defensemen. Team has zero identity, only willing to trade mediocre players, not drafting high, not trading anything really valuable. What are we doing? Okay, so I agree with a good chunk of that, although I talk about being in the same place. We had the guys from What Chaos over on Press Row Show the other day. And that was one of the things that Pete Blackburn kind of said. Is like, I don't know what the Flyers' identity is. I don't know what they're actually striving to do. I don't know what they're working toward. And I think it's a fair point. This is where, like, I think that this trade deadline on Friday does matter. And that's why I continue to say I think the dumbest thing that the Flyers can do is stand pat at the deadline. I don't think they should add. I don't care about the fact that the Flyers have won a couple of games, right? Like, they have far too many teams to try to leapfrog. They have not shown a propensity for being able to put a ton of games together in a row, a bunch of wins together in a row. Like, I don't see it. I will point out that as of right now, the Flyers have played 59 games. They've got 65 points. Ahead of them currently, Ottawa, Columbus, Washington. That's a group. They are currently 10 points behind the Islanders. They have 2 games in hand on New York, but they are 10 points behind the Islanders for third place in the Metropolitan Division. And it certainly feels as though, unless something really changes, it feels like both of the wild cards are going to come from the Atlantic. Detroit right now has 74 points. Boston has 71. There's always a chance that, like, you know, Washington is 2 points behind Boston, but they've played 3 additional games. Is there a path potentially to a team like Columbus maybe jumping into that mix and taking that second wild card spot? Maybe. But the Flyers are so far back right now. I don't know how you can try to rationalize, if you are Philadelphia, making a move to bring players in. To me, this is the ultimate opportunity to move a player out. Risto right now, to me, is the perfect player to move at the deadline. I don't want to have the conversation about, more teams might be interested in the summer. I don't believe that. I don't think that him being dealt with 1 year left on the deal is going to be advantageous to this team. I don't think that it's worth hanging on to Risto and watching him inevitably get hurt between now and the end of the season. I just don't think it is. The Flyers should actively do whatever it takes to move off of Risto, get that man, good guy, get that guy out of town, lower the ceiling, lower the floor, acquire at least one asset coming back. I think that there is a non-zero chance that if the Flyers were to make Risto available, and if they were to get teams like Montreal and Boston and Dallas bidding against each other, they could end up getting a first-round pick for a guy who isn't going to exponentially raise the ceiling of the team acquiring him, but he would certainly help solidify the blue line and bring a big body who can also play in most situations for your team. Risto would be a valuable add. I think Dallas is the team that actually makes the most sense stylistically. Would Montreal be able to give you a better asset? Maybe. Could Boston give you a good asset? Maybe. Would I rather get a pick from Montreal or Boston? Of course I would. Because I think that ultimately, like, Dallas has a better chance of going further, which means that pick is going to be worse. But then again, can I really see Montreal or Boston parting with their own first-round pick to a team that's in their conference? I don't know. I'm thinking probably not. Risto should be gone on Friday. Could a Garnet Hathaway get moved? Could that be why he's been in the lineup? Maybe they're trying to get a team that is a contender to want to take him on as like their extra forward. Maybe. Will a Nick Delorier get moved? Probably not. Could a Nick Seeler get a look? Depending on what the market is for defensemen at the deadline, I could see a scenario where Nick Seeler gets interest. Does it match what the Flyers think he's worth? I don't know. If they're able to move Risto first, I do think that they'd be less likely to move Seeler. But man, if you could move both of those guys and get picks back or get picks and a prospect, across the 2 deals, it would certainly help things. The one thing that the Flyers are in really rough shape, and I've said this recently here and on Snow the Goalie, but like the problem the Flyers have right now is that they can't tear it down to the studs at this point, 3 years into the rebuild. They can't. They had that opportunity and they chose to go a different direction. They chose to extend Tippett, to extend Konechny, rather than deal them. They could still theoretically move Tippett. I don't think Konechny would want to get moved, although if it feels like this is going to be another 2 years away or, 2 years away from being 3 years away or whatever, maybe Konechny finally says, yeah, you know what, I'd like a change of scenery. But I don't think they can tear it all the way down. I don't think you could do that in year 3. But if you move a guy like Risto, maybe it has the Walker effect. Maybe it does. Maybe you're able to get that first round pick, and then also it doesn't change your performance that much. I do think that they'll drop. I do. I do think that they will drop a little bit, but I don't know how much. So the way for you to get worse actively and easily and quickly would be to move Risto. And if you can also move Sealer, you do that too. Now, I'm looking to see which pick it is that the Flyers own from Toronto. Let's see. Here we go. There you go. Amadeo says Boston doesn't currently have a top 10 pick. WTF. It's not their pick. The pick that Boston has is actually Toronto's pick this year, but it's top 5 protected. So if the Flyers were to talk to Boston and Boston really felt bullish about a relatively open Eastern Conference, below the top 2 teams, below a team like a Tampa and a Carolina, and they really were bullish on it, and they would move that pick, well then absolutely 100%, hell yeah, bye Risto, good luck, God bless, cool. I don't see any scenario where Boston says, yeah, we're going to move that Toronto pick in 2026. I don't see it. I think that would be insane. I don't see it. As of right now, Toronto would be 8th. If the order were to play out based on percentages, Toronto right now would finish 8th in the lottery, which would then mean that pick would go to Boston. If you think that the Bruins would be willing to potentially trade the 8th overall pick in the upcoming draft for Rasmus Ristolainen, I think you're out of your mind. Landro says, trade Vladar and see how quick they fall. That would be, if you were looking to blow this thing up right now and make sure you win very, very few games, yeah, that would be the one. Here's an interesting note, right? The Flyers have Toronto's pick next year. Let's say conceptually that Toronto does want to move Auston Matthews. Let's just say they do. I don't think they do. But let's just say Auston Matthews and the Leafs don't have much of a future together. Could Toronto look to get that pick back? Could you build a similar trade for Auston Matthews that the Canucks wanted for Quinn Hughes? Would you be willing to part with Cam York and Jamie Drysdale, or Cam York or Jamie Drysdale, and Owen Tippett or Tyson Forster and Porter Martone, and give the Leafs back their pick for 2027? Because obviously if they're going to trade Matthews, they're going to be a worse team. Trade them back there first. And do you include a first of your own? Is that even remotely close to enough to getting back for Auston Matthews? I would think probably not, but you never know. The reason I ask all these questions, though, is because if you remember, last week I asked the question about what would Toronto fans do when Auston Matthews returned to Scotiabank Arena. I actively wondered, how would the Toronto faithful respond to their captain? And if you remember, there was a lot of belief out there that the Maple Leafs fans were going to be unanimous in their approval of Auston Matthews, that it was all a media overblown narrative, and that when push came to shove, the fans were going to be overly supportive of Auston Matthews. I want you to hear from the arena what it sounded like when Auston Matthews was announced along with some of his fellow Leafs who were also Olympians.
And gold medalist, and the captain of your Toronto Maple Leafs,
Now, I want to re-rack that a second because one thing that got cut out of here is when his teammates were announced, unanimous approval. Not vociferous cheering, but like it was cheering. It was pretty damn unanimous. Listen to the sound again of the response that Matthews got.
And gold medalist.
Right there.
And the captain of your Toronto Maple Leafs, Auston Matthews.
And then there's where the cheering starts. Were they booing because it was the U.S. sweater? Were they booing because it was the American sweater? Or not? Because when it came back around to Matthews and he's there in his Leafs sweater, well, you can hear more cheers. But make no mistake about it, there were boos, and that was from in the arena. I didn't want to play the TV feed because you know how TV feeds are. You can dampen the sound. If it's pro wrestling, you can add cheers where there are boos. You can add boos where there are cheers. That was not a unanimous applause for Auston Matthews. I'm very interested in finding out, is Auston Matthews going to stay with Toronto? Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. Nick Habe asks, that's how they treat their players? Not great. So, AJ thinks that they were booing the U.S. They were booing the U.S. sweater for winning the gold. Maybe. Adam Klika says, booing because it's the Team USA captain. Maybe. So, all right. I think it's probably a good spot to end for today. I think we got to everything that I wanted to get to on today's show. Let me take a real quick look at the description of the episode really quick. I want to make sure I didn't leave anything out. We went a little bit long today. We've been keeping it to a pretty cool hour, but let's see. We talked about the Gene Segura, Bryce Harper story. We talked about Bryson Stott and Andrew Painter having standout performances for the Phillies. Embiid getting hurt again. Edgecombe's dive. We did that. We broke that whole thing down. Jared McCain having a really nice stretch with the Thunder and the Drysdale and Ristolainen of it all. I think we're in a good spot. I think it's a good place to end. I will be back on Wednesday here on the Russ Joy Show. If you haven't done so already, do me a favor, like the video, share the video, subscribe. You could, become part of the ever-expanding and ever-growing list of subscribers to the show. We're up to 2,123 subscribers as of recording today on March 2nd. So if you haven't done so already, like the video, share the video, subscribe, and then do me a favor. If you see the video content over on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, follow those accounts. Hit the videos with a like. If you can, share them. I don't care who you share them to. It could be a friend, could be a coworker, could be a relative, could be an ex-girlfriend. I don't care. It's just good for the algorithm. People like to see that you're sharing stuff. So share the videos if you can. That'd be swell. You could set up a group chat that you and your buddies share your favorite clips from your favorite shows. You just share it into that group chat and then you mute the notifications. You just kind of help out your favorite content creators out there. Am I a content creator? I don't know. That feels like a pretty gross thing to say. How about just guy who talks into a microphone? By the way, I had two people come up to me at the last Flyers game. I was up in the upper level. I went to go get a couple of tubular meats with the deli mustard and grab a cookie. And as I was coming back, two guys stopped me independently, opposite ends of the balcony. Say, hey, Russ, really love the show. Love the podcast. I said, thanks, man. Appreciate that. So if it was one of you guys, how you doing? All right, that's it. I think that's all. All right, I'll be back on Wednesday. Don't forget, if you like podcast feeds, this is available over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Or you can watch it on Spotify. You can watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on Facebook or X. I don't care. Just make sure you watch. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell to get notified whenever a new episode comes out. Okay, that's it. Until Wednesday, this has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. I don't know if this is true. Was it Nick Abe? Says it was me? I said good podcast? Nick Abe, if that was you, and the fact that you didn't say, hey, Russ, I comment on the show, I'm Nick Abe. We got beef now. Not real beef, but that's the thing. You should talk. We have to have that conversation in person. It's very nice. Okay. Ford says he sees Russ all the time, compliments him on the WD-40 on his dome. He's talking about right here. Making fun of the 5-head, the 6-head. All right, Phil Dunphy. How about we settle down? How about we settle down, sport? All right. Anyway, talk to all of you Wednesday here on the Russ Joy Show. Have a great day, everybody. Have a marvelous Monday. I'll see you on a wonderful Wednesday. Bye now.